Here's your Farm and Ranch Report from the Montana Ag Network.
Well, welcome back to the noon news. Looking at our farm and ranch news on this Tuesday. Last week's bomb cyclone continues to inundate parts of the Midwest with floodwaters this week. Following the storm that hit Nebraska the hardest, the floodwaters made their way downstream over the weekend to include Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri. Multiple levees have been topped or breached, which has swamped farmland in small towns along the Missouri River. Ag groups like the Nebraska Farm Bureau are doing all they can to assist in the recovery efforts.
We are seeing the waters recede in certain areas of the state. That is a good thing, but we've got huge issues with infrastructure, roads and bridges and those kinds of things. You know, nearly a third of our state where it's very difficult to get around. So those issues will continue on here, and I know that efforts are being made to expedite those repairs, but everybody has to be very cautious here. After the floodwaters are passed, we'll have a lot of things that we'll be dealing with.
Nebraska Farm Bureau also has a disaster relief fund available online.
Again, people can go to our website and contribute to that fund. The monies that come into that fund will be used exclusively for farmers and ranchers and those in and about our rural communities, and 100% of that money will be used to help people in need. Well, there'll be no administrative costs or anything like that. We're using out of that fund here today, and part of that is the water that we're moving into those areas. So again, just really appreciate everyone's concern and their willingness to help.
Again, the Nebraska Farm Bureau Relief Fund and Supply Exchange can be found on their website, nefb.org. On the trade front now, China and the U.S. have reached a tentative agreement on enforcement of a potential trade agreement between the two nations. White House Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow said Friday the mechanism blocks Beijing from retaliating if the U.S. implements tariffs on Chinese products because China violated the terms of an eventual agreement, possibly. Seemingly, that means U.S. agricultural products would be protected from retaliation, like seen in the tit-for-tat trade war, if true. The two sides appear to be inching closer to reach some sort of agreement, though the agreement won't come this month as previously thought. China and the U.S. will now postpone their meetings until June. Returning back this afternoon, fed cattle slaughter last week. Those numbers are in, and we see that estimates that about 467,000 head were slaughtered, 0.4% lower than the previous year. Since the start of the year, fed cattle slaughter has been a total of 4.6 million head, down 7% lower than the same 10-week period the previous year. Of course, those numbers come to us from the USDA. And finally this afternoon, Tyson Fresh Meats, the beef and pork subsidiary of Tyson Foods, is introducing DNA technology to trace beef back to the individual animal of origin for its Open Prairie Natural Angus Beef program. A DNA sample from cattle entering the Open Prairie program will be used to trace the origin of individual cuts of beef as they move through the supply chain. The patented tracking process is intended to assure customers the Open Prairie beef products they buy were sourced from ranches where cattle were raised to meet specific requirements such as no antibiotics ever and no added hormones. And that will do it for today's Farm and Ranch News. We'll send it back over to the news desk.